Tonight, I'm joined by Professor Ben Barton, author of the book Fixing Law Schools. How you doing, Ben?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining. So fixing law schools, and so that indicates that law schools are in need of fixing. So I'm hoping that you can share a little bit about the problem with legal education, and especially what pre-law students need to be aware of attending law school, both in general and then in particular during the time of COVID-19. So could you share just a little bit about some of the fundamental problems with legal education in general and how pre-law students and law students might not be served fully by what they're expected to be paying for?
Yeah, totally. Well, and then there's three in the book, and then I'll give a fourth afterward that's a much more current concern. Yeah, Perfect. The first is there's a long-standing concern, which is that law schools, basically since we adopted the Harvard model in 1880, have not done a great job of preparing people to practice law. And so that's just a long-standing problem that goes along with it. Second problem, an associated problem, really came to the fore after the recession in 2008, which is that the job market was really bad. And it was bad for years. Like, it was bad until 2015. But then actually it's sort of been bad since the 90s. Roughly a third of the people who graduate from law school since the 90s do not work as lawyers, even if they pass the bar and get a JD. And that's not the same for engineers or for doctors. And also the people who don't work as lawyers, some of them are super psyched, like, Barack Obama's not working as a lawyer, it's working out for him. But some of them are not super psyched. And in fact, the people who are most likely to be dissatisfied with the decision to go to law school are the people who are not working as a lawyer. And then the last one is, I'm forgetting the last one. It'll come to me. Oh, the last one is the COVID thing. We had basically sort of dug our way out of that. There was a collapse in applications and admissions. And so the book is from the Trump bump, from collapse to the Trump bump and beyond. And now we're in the beyond part, but it turns out that in the COVID time, it's a really mixed up time to decide whether you want to go to law school or not. So this audience is great. This audience is perfect for the book. And I'm super, super extra happy to meet people before they come to law school. This is the right time to think about it.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of things that folks should know that law schools are obviously not advertising. And so let's start with the COVID angle in particular, because that's the most pressing, that's the newest, and folks may not be aware of exactly how law schools are being affected. So first and foremost, I'm thinking about the fact that law school is going to be online in many cases, and what students may be missing out on by attending online versus in person. Could you share a little bit about the benefits of in person and what they might be missing online?
Yeah, totally.
Or conversely, maybe there are benefits to online. I don't know, but I'll put the balls in your court.
Yeah, so I would say schools are doing three different things. One thing that they're doing is they're going 100% online. Another thing that they're doing is they're going to a hybrid model where it's partially online and it's partially in person. So for example, at Tennessee where I teach, I'm going to teach Torts 1 in the fall, and 2/3 of the class is going to come for class, and then 1/3 is going to watch it online, and that'll rotate through as we go. And that's to make room for people to sit and have masks on. And then some people are kind of sort of trying to do a fully in-person model, but it's not really possible to do that with masks and distancing. So there actually aren't very many schools I'll just say this. There's 203 ABA accredited law schools in America. None of them will arrive in the fall looking like they did a year ago. Like, it's not possible to do that. So what would I say about that? There is, in terms of the empirical evidence, it's actually kind of hard to say which is better or which is worse between online and in person. In terms of the anecdotal evidence, I can say anecdotally, most people would prefer to be in person. And that was certainly true at Tennessee, and that's been true of surveys taken at all the law schools across the country. And I'll just say, in my classes in the spring, I had students say, and I thought this was super persuasive, they were like, I didn't want to go to online school. If I wanted to go to online school, I'd be at online school. Like, there's a reason why I'm here in person. And I'll just say, for me personally, and it's sort of funny, we're doing a Zoom call, but for me personally, I like to go to, so I'm a season ticket holder for football and basketball and the Lady Vols here at the University of Tennessee. And one reason why is I like group human experiences. Like, I think a group of humans together adds something special to the mix. And so I'm a fan of in person, and I would be concerned if I were going this fall about that. But I mean, basically, even before the COVID thing, my number one piece of advice to students in the situation where they're thinking about going to law school was to, one, make sure that they wanted to be a lawyer, two, be very realistic about what kind of lawyer that they want to be, and then three, that's my dog, by the way, sorry. And then three, find a school that fits what it is that you want to do. And now there's actually a fourth one, which is you have to find out what they're doing in COVID, because they might be having whatever they're doing this fall might not be what they do in the spring. And we might be in the situation where we're looking at more than a year of this kind of thing. And so it's real important to do research on all of those.
What was your experience like teaching this past spring semester, if you did? And then what do you anticipate experiencing this fall?
So I think my experience was a little bit, my experience was mixed, I would say. And I expect my experience to be much better in the fall. And I'll just be honest, I think that's going to be true all over the country because it was sprung on us in the spring, in the middle of the semester. And so that made it a lot harder. That being said, like, so for example, if we were going to go to completely online, I would be very worried about that because one reason why it worked in the spring is the students knew me and they liked me and they were aware of who I was. And that was, so they gave me a lot of credit when we went online. They knew that I cared about them, that I was trying as hard as I could. When you arrive first online, that's not necessarily the case. And then second, the professors will have a chance to get used to it. All of that being said, it's not the same as being in person. And in particular, these folks are going to be 1Ls, and the 1L experience is a super intense experience. And in my opinion, there's something about the in-person, and it's not just in person for the faculty, it's in person for the students too. Like there's a lot of bonding. Steve, I can't remember, are you a law grad?
I'm actually not. No, I got sidetracked with the LSAT, never went myself.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I'll tell you, I'm a law grad and I'm a happy law grad. And you make relationships in your first year. I mean, still some of my dearest friends in life are the people in my study group from my first year. Like it's just an intense, searing experience. And that would not be the case if I was doing that on Zoom. I can promise you that.
Yeah. Now, I'm hoping we can go back to some of the fundamental questions that you raise in the book regarding things like employment stats or the education in law school itself and how that may not set students up for success afterwards. Now, our audience here, they're pre-law students in my course, and they're looking to make their list of schools to which they want to apply. And I'm wondering what things might they want to be on the lookout for, aside from, of course, the devilish U.S. News rankings.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I would actually caution everybody on here to not rely solely on the rankings. There's a mix of things that you want to look at. The first thing is that there's really, really, really a rich trove of ABA data that every single law school is required to turn over. And if you do ABA disclosures and the name of the school into Google, you can find all of these reports. These reports have really, really, really detailed data. And in particular, they have data on the percentage of people who pass the bar, the percentage of people who get jobs, and what kind of jobs that they get. So that's a minimum. Before you even apply to a school, let alone spend the money, you need to do that work for sure. And then the second thing that they have is they have the grants given out by the schools, the percentage of students who get the grants. And so it's choosing between the 35th ranked school and the 45th ranked school, and you're going to choose based on price. That's really an error. That's not how you do it. I mean, you to choose based on the ranking without the price. That's a huge error. Like you have to, if you're going to be a lawyer, you want to be very, very, very cognizant of risk management. That's basically what lawyers do. And so that's the same thing with applying for law school. Paying full freight to go to a school that's slightly higher ranked is just not a good use of your funds at all. And the way you can tell that is basically you want to work from first principles. What is it that you're hoping to do? Like, do you want to be a DA? Do you want to be a public defender? Do you want to work at a big law firm? Do you want to work in a particular city? From there, then you look at the schools you're applying to and you ask yourself, what are the odds that I can do the thing that I want to do from the school that I'm applying to at the cost that I'm going to pay? And that's how you do it. These schools, every school in America has to turn over this information in the ABA. They all have very, very detailed information on their employment results and their bar results. So you can call the school and say, I would like to know how many people have gotten the job I want. Like how many people are DAs in St. Louis, or how many people are public defenders in Berkeley, or how many people are environmental lawyers in Minneapolis. And the school can tell you that. They have that data. If they're like, oh, we can't find that, then that's bad, because they actually have it. Believe me, every school in America collects data on all of their graduates and what they're doing. And just go ahead and press them on that and get the information that you need before you go. In COVID and just generally, it's actually a weird, like if you know what you want to do and you choose the right place, it's a great time to go to law school. It really is. I feel terrible for the people who are graduating law school right now. It sucks to graduate into a recession. You have a hard time getting a job, and your earnings, like this is just a statistical fact, they don't catch up. But coming into law school in a recession and then graduating out of the recession is fine. You'll be fine. So it's not a bad time to go if you do your research and choose the right place. In the book, I say, and this is true in COVID or just period, it's a terrible, terrible, terrible time to be a confused history professor who doesn't know what they want to do and is going to pay 200 grand to go to law school. Like, that's not a good deal. That's not going to work out for you at all. But if you figured it out and you know what you want to do, it's a great time to go. The world needs smart, hardworking people to know what they want to do, and law school is a decent place for that, for sure.
Yeah, and I agree that going in now could be a good idea, because then at least you're waiting out the recession. 3 years from now, hopefully things will be better. And if you go in with a clear purpose and having done the homework, you can make an educated decision. And just to frame what you said another way about the rankings, what I took from that was it could be worthwhile to go to a slightly lower ranked school if you can get significant scholarship money to compensate you for dropping in the rankings. Yeah.
No, totally. Yeah, no, for sure.
And also, I like what you said about asking the schools details on their recent graduates. And as you said, they collect that data. The ABA requires them to share that data. And so it's worth it to the schools to hunt down those graduates and see, are they in a job requiring a JD 9 months after graduation?
Oh, yeah, no, dude. And they know that information. In particular, there are certain types of jobs that a lot of people go to law school thinking that they would like to do. So for example, a lot of people are like, I would love to be a sports agent. Like, that'd be great. Like, lots of people enjoy doing that. That being said, go ahead and ask at your school, how many people are sports lawyers from your school? And they'll probably be like, oh, we have some schools are like, we have a specialist in that. You know what I mean? Like we give you an actual certificate, and you're like, wow, that would be great. How many people are doing that job right now? And if they're like, oh, I don't have that data, then you're like, well, enjoy the certificate. You know what I mean? Like, they can tell you that, and you just have to be really cognizant of that.
What are some of the things that schools do well or schools do poorly when it comes to helping graduates get jobs? Do you see them doing a whole lot in that department? And do you see variation in terms of the level of support they provide?
Yeah, I actually think that law schools in general do a relatively mediocre job of that. And in particular, like, having done the research, most schools have a placement office or something that's called a placement office. And at almost all of these schools, the complaint is all they do is schedule on-campus interview for law firms. And again, like, institutional analysis, the reason why they do that is that's the easiest thing to do. Those people come and look for people, and you're like, oh, look at that. That's great. I'm trying to find people jobs. These people want to give them jobs. Let's just go ahead and do that. So I would, go ahead and press the schools on what their placement office looks like what types of other opportunities they give beyond that. And in particular, look to see what kind of stuff they do in terms of government and nonprofit. Those are jobs that lots and lots of people who go to law school want, and not every school helps them find, for sure. And so, like, obviously, I teach in Tennessee. I know that backwards and forwards. Every year we place a bunch of people in public defender's office, DA's offices, and legal aid offices. And that's a huge priority of our placement office. Like, we're the state law school, so we're basically getting those people jobs. Make sure, if that's what you want to do, that your school actually, has a record of accomplishing that.
What about during COVID? I don't know if you've heard anything about this, but obviously on-campus interviewing and recruitment isn't going to happen during COVID. I imagine it probably didn't happen a whole lot this past spring. Have you heard anything about what that might look like moving forward in terms of recreating that online in some way?
Yeah. So I'll say a couple things about that. The first thing I'll say about that is that this is really similar, and similar in a bad way. I mean, it's a scary way. It's really similar to 2008. Right where we are right now, no one knows. Literally no one knows. The firms are frozen. State budgets are frozen. Local budgets are frozen. Nobody knows what it's going to look like in 6 months or a year. We just don't know the answer to that. So the first part of it is not the mechanics of it. The mechanics of it are relatively simple. I think that like our placement office and other placement offices are going to do interview days, but instead of dragging the sorry people to Knoxville, Tennessee, they'll just do it Zoom. And there's actually a version of this, like some other stuff from COVID, where 4 years from now, when there's a vaccine or everyone's got herd immunity, they'll be like, you know what, we're just going to do it that way. Like, why did we do the on-campus interviewing period? I don't know the answer to that, because I actually like to see people in person, but you never know. Like, that may be where we go. So the mechanics of it are not the problem. The much scarier thing is the jobs part of it. Like, we just don't know. It seemed like in the first month, you know, like basically between March and mid-April, there were a wave of layoffs in a lot of places. And I know for a fact that there were a bunch of law grads who had jobs yanked from them. Law firms saying, well, we're just not going to be able to hire you, or local governments or state governments who were like, our budget is uncertain. We said we were going to hire you, but now we're just going to have to wait. So yeah, we're going to have to wait and see all of that. We don't know the answer to that. For the people who were on this chat, the good news is that they're looking at something 3 years from now. If things still suck like this in 3 years, then it's not a great time to go to law school. But you know, if things suck like that in 3 years, they're going to suck everywhere.
That's exactly it. If the economy is that bad, there may be no good options, but at least there's a hope that 3 years from now things will improve, or that one can invest in oneself and gain some skills and do some networking to set yourself up for success down the line. Now, I'd love to ask you a little bit about just what the nature of legal education itself. I've often heard it's quite theoretical, it's quite academic, and many people, I imagine the majority of grads, probably want to do something in the for-profit sector. And I'm wondering what the skills are that they might want to focus on, or what they might want to look for in legal education versus what might be the default or status quo option.
Yeah, totally. So my recommendation to people coming in is to look for two different things at the law school level. And they're actually both hard to find, and I'll explain why in a second. The first thing is look to see what type of clinical, experiential, and externship opportunities the school has. And this is why it's hard, every school is going to say, oh, we've got a lot of those. But if you actually go to the catalog and look at it, and then you go to the faculty page and look at it, then you can figure out whether they have a lot of them or not. If they've got one person who's a director of externships and nobody on the clinical faculty, then that's bad. That means they don't have very much, right? Because it's the humans who do the work. If they don't have any humans, then that's bad. So you can figure all of that stuff out. The second thing I would say is to look to see what the school does in terms of training the students for technology. We are at, like, one of the reasons why the 2008 recession really lingered in the legal field is because we're in a total crease point. It's not 100% clear what's going to happen, and technology is changing the market, and in some ways is sort of it's going to push some lawyers out of the market. The good news is it's going to push older lawyers who don't know anything about technology out, and so the people who I'm talking to here are young people who are in a much better position than the older people. That being said, you want to go to a law school that has at least some attention to that teaches you something about either using law on the web or using law in your technology on the web or using technology in your practice, so that you can figure those things out. Because for almost every single practice, whether it's a big firm all the way down to working for the government or whatever you want to do, technology is going to be a huge part of the future, and we have to start training the students for that.
Yeah, I would certainly imagine. So one other thing I've been thinking about is the fact that a lot more attorneys, at least it's been my perception, that a lot more attorneys are setting up as sole practitioners. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering about if you've noticed that as a trend that the statistics back up, and if so, what law students might look to be learning while they're in law school in terms of business skills to learn how to market themselves and set up a practice and things of that nature.
Yeah, so it's actually, as an empirical matter, that's not true. Sorry to be mean, but as an empirical matter, it's a little bit, it's way less prevalent than it used to be. Sorry, 200 years ago, everybody was a solo practitioner. Like Alexander Hamilton was a solo practitioner. Aaron Burr was a solo practitioner. Like there were no law firms, and there weren't any law firms until basically right before the Civil War. And those law firms were tiny, teeny, tiny little law firms. So now I'm going in the way, way, way back machine. So originally, every American lawyer was a solo practitioner. And then basically the percentage of solo practitioners in the private practice of law has stayed between 30 and 45%, period. And some of that'll fluctuate. So for example, you'll have students who graduate from law school, work at a firm for a little while, and then go out and hang up a shingle, or otherwise just go straight out to hanging up a shingle. The percentage of hanging up a shingle, as you can imagine, is actually economically driven more so than taste driven. So in those years, those really lean years, the 2008, it was really more like 9, 10, 11, 12, the bad years for employment, more people went out and hung out shingles than would have under other circumstances. And again, it's hard to measure because there are a bunch of people who work for a couple of years and then go out and do it. But yeah, that is in fact a choice that people make, and it's actually not necessarily a bad choice depending. Here's what I'll say about that. The old model of doing it, where you get an office and a secretary and print out a bunch of cards and buy a bunch of office furniture and stuff, is a disaster, and you can't do that. Like, it's not good business management at all. The new model version of doing it, where you don't have an office and you don't have a staff and you just take the business that comes in the door, is really, really, really pretty workable. There's a whole, I'm going to forget the name of it. There's a great software company, and I'm not recommending the software, I'm recommending the data. There's a software company that provides software basically for solo practitioners and for small firms. And I'm going to remember it by the end of the time I'm talking. And they gather the data and they anonymize the data, and then they publish the data. And they publish really interesting data. This is the billing function of the law firm. So as you can imagine, it's like, I don't know if these people are before becoming lawyers, but I promise you the most important thing is billing. And then even more important than that is getting paid for billing. Like, that's how you make the money. And also the funny thing about being a solo practitioner is it's not a complicated business. It's a really, really straightforward business. You do work and then you ask for money for it, and then you get paid for it, and that's it. You're not like creating a product. You don't have like a bunch of delivery dates or whatever else. Like, it's a really, really, really one-to-one. It's an old school thing. I mean, basically most solo practitioners in the US run on the same model that Alexander Hamilton and Burr did. They just work, count their hours, ask for money, get the money. And yeah, so this is the billing program for it. And they found that the average solo practitioner spends like 20% of their time on billable work, and the rest of their time on trying to get billable work or running their stupid business. That's not a good model at all. And technology is supposed to be the way that you fix that. And so if you were going to go to law school to do that, you should focus on that right from the very beginning. You should focus on all the ways that you can get as many people in the door who are going to pay you to do work, so that most of your time is spent on billable work. And actually, like, I'm a huge believer technology is the answer to that. And so for example, lots of lawyers are super worried, and it's fair to be worried about Rocket Lawyer or about LegalZoom. The answer to that is to compete with them, not to hide in your bed and be sad about it. And computerization is the way to compete with them. There's a bunch of expertise and individual service that lawyers can add on top of computerization, and that's, especially for the solo practice, like the Main Street lawyer part of the business, that's the answer to that.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. That's fascinating, actually. So it really comes down to hustle. If that's the route you want to go.
But it's hustle and savvy. It's hustle and savvy. I don't mean to make it sound like the people are going to get pushed out or not trying hard. Well, that's the thing that's really hard about it, is like, they're not spending 20% of their time on billable work because they're lazy and they like to golf. I promise you, that's not the situation. It's a dog-eat-dog market out there, and they're trying as hard as they can. They're just not doing it the right way.
Right. No, it's out of necessity, really.
Yeah.
No, thank
Oh,
you
it's
for sharing that.
Clio. That's the name of the company. It's
Clio.
CLIO, Clio. And I actually have used the software. The software is fine, but I'm not telling you to buy the software. I'm just telling you the Clio, like if you actually care about this, they put out these reports. There's one for 19 and 18 that have the hours on it. And it's amazing. It's like super gripping.
Well, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. I put the link in the chat here.
Beautiful.
Yeah, Clio. Yeah, and by the way, another thing I wanted to mention is that you were talking about the ABA disclosures a little while ago. I don't know if you've probably come across law school transparency.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kyle McKinty.
I love law school
analyzing that data.
transparency, and those guys are great, and their work is really, really good. I would get it from the horse's mouth. Like, and I'm not trying to be mean to them, but go ahead and go. All of the, not to be mean to them, all the useful data they have comes from the ABA. Just go ahead and get it from the ABA yourself. And the reason why is, first, you want to be a lawyer, so you really, really, really want to learn how to read this sort of data and figure it out yourself. And second, this way you don't get any spin on it. I mean, I love them. I'm not saying that they put spin on it, but you can read the data for yourself and figure it out.
Yeah, definitely. And so that's really useful. So we got ABA disclosures, we have Clio, we have your book, Fixing Law Schools. I've put the link in the chat here, putting it again. Anything else you want?
Beautiful, thank you.
Of course. Anything else you want to share with the students here before we sign off?
No, I mean, I will share like sympathy and empathy. It's a hard time. It's a super hard time. And if I think, I was actually thinking about this. I mean, we're doing a whole bunch of discussions with the law school, and I've done a whole bunch of these chats because I wrote a book on law schools. And I would think that it would be a hard time to decide what to do. I have two daughters. I've got a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old, and my 19-year-old is going to be a sophomore in college, and my 17-year-old is going to be a senior in high school. And so they're facing really, really, really similar challenges. And in particular, you know, my rising sophomore is like, I don't know, should I even go? Should I take a gap year? And these are all really, really hard questions to answer. Steve, is it okay? Should I use a curse word or should I bleep it out for myself?
So you can use it if you like. It's fine.
Okay, beautiful. So in law school, sometimes I describe the situation where you don't have any good options. And I call that the menu of shit sandwiches, where you just have to choose a shit sandwich that tastes better than the other shit sandwiches. And that's kind of where we are. You know what I mean? Like, so the question of whether you should go this fall or next fall, these are really hard questions. And figuring out whether like, if you were to take a year off, what would you do with that year? It's not like you can travel to Asia. You know what I mean? Like all of these experiences are going to be sort of suboptimal. And so it's just a shame to have that happen. And I'm sad. I'm sad for the students who are going to come to Tennessee, and I'm just sad for the students generally. Yeah,
well, it's a tough situation for everybody, regardless of what path they're choosing. But I appreciate you're at least giving some useful food for thought to help people make the best possible option given the circumstances. And obviously, as you said, more research, more awareness, doing the homework can make a big difference. And as you said, there could be cases where you could get significant scholarship money for law school and at least have a pretty decent.
Oh, for sure. Dude, listen, I meant to say this. This is an additional thing that you should pay attention to. You should look to see, like, there are some law schools that are going to fold. And you should look to see how the law school's doing. Even before, like, there's several law schools that have folded before the pandemic. And I promise you that the pandemic has not improved the financial situation of a whole bunch of law schools. Now, there's some law schools that are going to react to this on the lower end by just being like, now we're online. That's it. That's all we do. And that actually would be a significant savings. And so maybe they can stay in business doing that. It's not clear how long the ABA will let them do that, but it seems like they'll float them for a year or two under the circumstances. But there are other law schools that are not going to be, like if a law school's standalone law school without a large endowment, with a high tuition that's not going completely online, I would be really worried about that. Because I can tell you, and you just have to read the Chronicle of Higher Ed, it's super expensive to try and operate under these circumstances. Like, it's just a mess. Like, you just have the people come in there clean all the time, and the masks and the plexiglass shields and all the technology that's going to be needed. And law schools, one of the points that the book makes is law schools were already under significant financial stress. And they were hoping that the Trump bump was going to float them and they were going to be fine. And it turns out that's not really going to be the situation. And so go ahead and make sure to look at that before you go.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with going to some of those questionable schools that are kind of on the border there. significantly lower ranked with sketchy employment outcomes, because if they don't even stick it out the 3 years, if they can't even survive, then you've got a problem at the last year or two of school. Or what are you going to do? Are you going to transfer?
Yeah, no, that would like in a situation, in a menu of disasters, that would be a huge one for sure. So I'm definitely recommending that people look into that.
Yeah, well, Professor Barton, Ben, I really appreciate your taking the time and sharing your insights and advice with everyone. The book is Fixing Law Schools. The link is in the chat. And thank you for joining. I'll be in touch when I post this.
Oh, Steve, anytime, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Yep. Adios.
Adios. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.